Welcome and good morning to this May 16th, 2022 special meeting of the CEP Strategic Advisory Committee. Luke, will you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Here.
Housing Commission Chair Parrish?
Here.
And Planning Commission Chair Scharf?
Present.
Okay.
Excellent. Everyone's here. We begin with item 1, 2, and 3, our approval of the minutes, can't speak. One, subject, approve the March 30th Community Engagement Plan Strategic Advisory Committee special meeting minutes. Recommended action is to approve the March 30th Community Engagement Plan special meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look them over? And I do want to point out that these are very abbreviated minutes. So some of the things which we had requested do not show up in the meeting minutes due to the format that we have. So we might want to, when we get to the new business or future agenda setting items, bring those items up. But I see there's a hand raised from Vice Mayor. Vice Mayor Chow?
I would not approve these minutes because it does not capture the guidance, because I looked at the agenda item, it's a report and getting guidance from this subcommittee, and the guidance is not captured in these minutes. I think the public and the committee members need to know what guidance were given or received or will be carried out, and those are not captured, and there has been no document capturing those guidance. So I would not approve the minutes until we have clarity on that.
I tend to agree with you, Vice Mayor, and perhaps the city attorney could weigh in on this, because we made requests which haven't yet been honored, and I personally would like to see that captured by the meeting minutes. What's your opinion on that?
So my understanding is that our council adopted a policy for recorded meetings that that these kind of high-level summary minutes are provided. Where meetings aren't recorded, more detailed minutes are provided. The theory being, of course, that people can go back and look at the recording. I understand it's also fairly straightforward to produce a transcript of these Zoom meetings if that would be helpful for people. But that was the policy that staff followed in preparing these minutes.
Okay, I hear you. I'm concerned about the items that we had requested, which haven't yet come to pass, and there's no way to be able to determine that based on these meeting minutes. So what do you suggest with regards to that? So for instance, we had requested that prior to the April 25th meeting that there would have been some outreach meetings that would have occurred, and there were requests for this particular agenda, which did not end up on this agenda. And so how do we handle these missing items?
So I think if there's a specific request for staff to report on an activity, that is within the scope of today's agenda, and that could also be made in the context of a direction for a future agenda item. If there's specific direction regarding the minutes, it'd probably be better to agendize that for the committee's discussion and have the whole committee vote on it. But right now, staff is following the citywide policy on the minutes. But there's certainly other ways that staff can provide that information to the committee and to members of the public, whether it's in a staff report or some other document.
So perhaps under old business, would that be an area where we can bring up the request that we had, even though it's not listed as an actual agenda item? Is it within our power to go over those items there?
So I think the nature of the request is encompassed within sort of the broader agenda item. If staff is prepared to discuss it today. If staff is not prepared to discuss it today, then I would suggest making that request as a request for a future agenda item.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that under perhaps item 4, the community meeting, we could delve into the requests that we had made?
I think so, yeah. I think it's a pretty, it's a pretty broad topic that covers community outreach.
Okay, thank you. And I see there's a couple of hands raised from members of the committee. Vice Mayor Chow.
A little history, I remember it was around 2015 or 16, the council changed the policy. They used to provide summary minutes of council meetings and planning committee meeting. Those were really helpful. But around that time, the council changed to action minutes. And but then I think the feedback from the council has been that when we had study sessions, the direction from the council was not captured in the council minutes. And as a result, the current practice of the city council is study session does include direction from the council. So I think asking for the guidance from the committee to be included when the recommended action is to provide guidance is within the scope of the current adopted policy, because whether we voted on it or not, guidance was provided. And furthermore, I assume
let me cut you off for a moment, Vice Mayor, and go to the city attorney, because I don't want this to delve into a separate topic about how the meeting minutes are
let me just finish my comment.
Conducted. So because this is not agendized as a topic about how we capture the meeting minutes, I want to make sure that if there is a debate about it, that it would go into to the city attorney to look it over. He can come back at the next meeting if there is any potential dispute about how the meeting minutes are captured. And Chris, do you have a comment on that? Do you need to go back, or are these meeting minutes properly captured? And if that's the case, then we're in a situation where we would approve, because we don't find errors. It is merely the format that we are taking issue with, and so I would like you to comment on that, please.
Yeah. So sorry, some feedback there. I'm not prepared to address the distinction between a study session and a regular meeting at this time. I would have to go back and look at that because some of that history, I would just have to go back and research it, because I think it predated my time at the city. So if there's a concern about that, what I might suggest is just continuing the approval of the minutes at this time, and we could come back and vote on it later, rather than
okay. I
having
think
a debate without the facts.
The rest of my comments is related to this agenda item. I think a document must exist where the staff capture all the guidance, because the staff need that to implement any of the guidance. So all we need is to have that document be made available. And whether it's part of the minute or not, that's debatable, but I would like to see that document that capture the guidance. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I think that would actually be a great new business item, to have a summary of what we have requested for this process thus far. Now I have 2 more hands raised, and I've got members of the public now with a hand raised. So next we go to Planning Commission Chair Scharf. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Chair Moore. Yeah, I would not vote to approve these minutes either. I mean, there's just such major omissions as to what transpired at the last meeting that they just need to go back and redo them to include those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Scharf. Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Yes, I'm not sure I understood the attorney's suggestion, but I wanted to move that we not vote on it until there's clarification on what should be done according to Vice Mayor's recollection, and then we can come back depending on what is decided and vote accordingly.
Okay, thank you. We move on to members of the public. I see 2 hands raised. First, we have Lisa Warren. Welcome, Lisa. You have 3 minutes. And I do not have host capability. I will need somebody to unmute Lisa. Okay, thank you.
So I just, while this discussion was happening, I went and tried to find the agenda for today to open it so that I could see the attachment for the minutes, and the link is not working. I tried 4 times, but so that's a concern. But I agree, and not being able to see the minutes, which I was going to see if public comments were recorded correctly and requests from the public as well, whether it's direction from this committee or comments from the public. I can find no logical reason not to have them in the minutes. Our minutes had gotten really, really bad a couple of years ago. They're better now, but not being able to see this at this moment, I can't even really comment. It's just, if all 4 of these committee members are concerned, I'm very concerned. So, and I agree, sometimes I have to go back and look for something, and doing it with a video is very difficult because you have to know exact time when that happened. So it's easier to have some guideline of minutes to let you know what time to go look at in a video to get the full picture. So I think it's poor practice for whatever is causing it. It doesn't sound good to me. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Lisa. And next we have Barris Evolich. Barris. All right, welcome, Barris.
Well, good morning and thank you. I've attended almost all of the City Council and Planning Commission and this advisory committee housing element Zoom meetings in the many hours that it's taken. And it is still unclear to me if the housing element properties for this cycle have been identified, and if so, which properties and why. If the inventory has been selected, what do the City Council and the Planning Commission plan to do to notify property owners who were specifically invited by the city to participate and who did this?
Pardon me, Barris. This is regarding approval of the minutes. So if you have edits or items regarding the minutes, that this would be the time to bring that up. Your comments are more appropriately fit under oral communications.
Okay.
So if you would like to.
Can I wait?
Yeah, just wait a moment. Yeah, just wait a moment. We'll move on to oral communications and then you can make your comments there. Thank you. Okay, so I believe we have a pretty unanimous request to continue the item, and just continuing this item need a motion and a second. Chris?
Sorry. Yes. Yeah, a motion to continue would need a motion and a second.
I'll move to continue this item.
And we have a second?
I second that.
Okay, and that was the Housing Chair Parrish is seconded. And Luke, will you please conduct the roll call vote?
Yes, Council Member Moore.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Aye.
Housing Commission Chair Parrish.
Aye.
And Planning Commission Chair Sharp.
Aye.
All right. Okay, so we've continued the approval of the minutes, items 1 through 3. We have no postponements. We move on to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the committee on any matter within the jurisdiction of the committee and not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. In most cases, state law will prohibit the commission from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. And I see we have members of the public with their hands raised. First, we have Jenny. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you very much, Chair. Moore. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin, and I'm just going to speak for a minute. You all are doing a great job. I'm just going to speak for a minute about a concern. Maybe this is about Bill AB 1120 by Buffy Wicks. And this is the one where it's called like the Great Housing Jobs Bill or something. And this is the one that I think this was the gut and amend from about 2 weeks ago that will allow housing by right ministerially with no CEQA. That means no looking at environmental damage, contamination on any commercial site. I guess it would be like any type of a building where you would have any type of tech buildings, old strip malls, etc. This would allow housing to be built there. Well, I am very, very concerned about this bill because it has, I think they were trying to help the trades, but it's not, you cannot cut CEQA out of this type of building. You cannot build housing on contaminated sites with PCBs and the groundwater. It's endangering the people that will live there. It's endangering the workers themselves. And I am very, very concerned that this bill is being rammed through the assembly and they will try to go to the Senate with it. And God forbid if the governor signed it. It shows a complete lack of understanding of the consequences of a bill like this. I am very, very concerned that Ms. Wicks is not thinking about the repercussions of this bill in times to come. You have on building sites, anyone knows in the Silicon Valley that a lot of tech sites have contaminations from groundwater, from carbon tetrachloride, very, very dangerous, causes cancer. There's a lot of places where there's groundwater contamination. You have former cleaning sites, gas stations that have groundwater contamination. It is foolhardy to go in. It is foolhardy to think that you can allow construction on sites like this without required cleanup, investigations into the site. Why anyone would allow this bill to get to this point is beyond my comprehension. I do not think Ms. Wicks has any technology background at all. And I'm really, really concerned that no one is looking out for fundamental facts of working with contaminated sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That might possibly be AB 2011. Next, we have Barris Evolich. Welcome, Barris.
Good morning again. And as I said earlier, I've attended almost all of the City Council and Planning Commission meetings and this advisory committee meeting regarding the housing element. And it's still unclear to me if the housing element properties for this cycle have been identified, and if so, which properties and why. If the inventory has been selected, what does the City Council and the Planning Commission plan to do to notify those property owners who were invited by the city to participate and who submitted the application but were not selected? Hopefully it's something more than a simple thank you for submitting your application, however your property was not selected. Also, why is the inventory limited? I found nothing in California documents that I've reviewed which say a city cannot identify more properties than the current minimum cycle number of units identified and required by the state. I especially want to thank Council members Moore, Vice Chair Chow, and Planning Commissioner Scharf for this committee and for their hard work and probative questions through this whole process. At the same time, I have not at all been impressed with the consultants hired by the city. More specifically, they simply read their slides, don't answer many important questions, and don't listen to the public. Lastly, it's unclear to me who is actually making the decisions for this very important project. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Barris. Next, we have Lisa Warren.
Barris, I'm going to answer Barris, I hope. So the Planning Commission is the only public meeting where we have seen selection, and it's a draft selection. Your family's property is on it, but it's not a final answer. And thank you for sharing your views and opinions and frustrations, because you are by far not the only one who has these same, and it's really great to hear from a property owner who was notified and responded, because we have, in my opinion, have an issue with that process anyway. And it may not be anyone's fault, but we need to act better about reaching out to those who didn't give a response, whether pro or negative. And to my knowledge, that has not been done yet. And I actually would very much like to add to the list of those people the Sheriff's Department and Fire Department. I think they need to be giving input on site selection in some fashion. They need to be on, and maybe not directly site selection, but they need to be on the list of focus groups. And I don't believe they currently are. So please make sure those two entities are added, particularly the sheriff. I continue to be frustrated with this. To thank all of you who are trying to improve it. It's just, we have a ticking time bomb, and we have very little, from meeting to meeting, there's not enough meat that gets presented to the public, at least. And it's very frustrating. And I think all the people that wanted to participate in the stakeholders group and were willing to put in the time, I don't think anybody's ever heard more about, I know that didn't get approved by council, but there's supposed to be engagement by those people, and that's not happening. And those people are going to lose interest or stop caring because this is not going very well. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to beat up on any one particular. It's a hard thing to do, but so much time is being spent on one piece in the eyes of the public that the pieces that we're familiar with are just like floating in the air and waiting to magically happen on their own, and it's not a good thing. Thank you. I know that was dramatic. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And I'm seeing no further hands raised. We come back to public hearings. So we are not going to be discussing the topic of the previous meeting minutes and the requests that we had under old business. We will be working that into the new business item, and we move on to item 4. Subject is the community meeting on the Cupertino housing element update.
Yeah,
and the recommended action is discussion regarding community meeting on Cupertino housing element update to be held in person on Monday, May 23rd, 2022 from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Community Hall. And that is next week on Monday at 6:30 p.m. And we will begin now with a staff report. Do we have a staff report, Luke?
Yes, thank you. Just have a brief staff report that as you summarize, that a week from today, there'll be an evening meeting that will be both in person and virtual, held at Community Hall at 6:30 p.m. That will be a community meeting focusing on affirmatively furthering fair housing. The meeting will last about an hour and a half. Andy Flower with EMC Planning and Kylie Clark with West Valley Community Services here, who will be taking part in that meeting. Again, it will have an AFFH focus, which is why Kylie will be involved in the organization and planning of that meeting. We had a very brief agenda as part of the packet for today's meeting, showing the format for the 23rd and how that will go. And I believe also on there, Kylie is asking for some committee input on one of the panelist spots. There will be panelists that evening with 2 series of breakout rooms. So what we're really looking for, I think, is 1, to show the meeting is going to be happening on the 23rd, and 2, to get committee input on that meeting, which is a week from today. So I will turn this over as well to Kylie and or Andy, who may also have some things to add on the meeting format for next week. So Kylie or Andy.
Yeah, I can cover some stuff, and then I'm sure you all will have questions and I'll be happy to answer those. But And I assume that you've all seen the agenda, but it's similar to a couple of events that we've had in the past that were really successful. And one of the primary goals for this event, since it's focusing on AFFH, is to provide a greater understanding of what affirmatively furthering fair housing means and why we need to have this as part of the housing element. And so first it's required by HCD, and so that's obviously a reason, but also by having a variety of experiences and identities represented in this event. The goal is to show that each group has different housing needs and different barriers that they face regarding housing. And so it's important to reach out to each of these groups and not just to do blanket outreach, which HCD is also really looking to see. And we will have both chances for people to ask questions to the panelists, and then also 2 opportunities for community members to have dialogue with one another. And following the event, I will issue a comprehensive report summarizing it, including some different quotes and information about how many people attended and all of that, which will be able to be included in the housing element. And I'll cover a little bit of what outreach we've done so far. So digitally, we've distributed the flyer and information on the event to all of the housing element email lists, and then also to the list of 67 community groups that I had compiled for the previous meeting. And we're also sharing it digitally with all West Valley Community Services clients and volunteers. And our volunteers in particular are definitely involved in the community, and that's something that we've been wanting to tap into to get more involvement in the housing element. And then physically, the flyer has been distributed at some different coffee shops. It's at the Cupertino Sports Center, and that it's there both displayed physically, and then also it's available for people to grab flyers because there are some on hand. And it will be hung up at City Hall. I'm not sure if it has yet, but obviously staff will be able to do that. And then it's also on display and available at West Valley Community Services, and it's going to be on display at De Anza and the library. And I also will definitely want input from the committee. If you all have any other ideas for where you'd like me to display the flyer, I'm happy to do that. And I'm planning to speak tomorrow during public comment at the Cupertino City Council meeting to formally invite the council member and then any community members who might be there listening to public comment to make them aware of the event. And so the 2 things that I'm seeking input on, besides anything else that you all want to add, is first, any additional outreach you want me to do or for West Valley to do. And then second, on a panelist, we can add an additional panelist to represent another group or identity if there's anyone that you all are interested in. And something else I want to add is that obviously the panel does not cover every identity, it does not cover every group, and this is largely because that wouldn't be possible. And so what I was trying to do with selecting the different groups is to find people who really do have different needs and kind of fall into very different areas. And we are going to be doing outreach to all of the different groups, but for now we're just going to have some represented because that's all that we're able to have in order to have a panel that's actually answering questions and everyone can participate.
Thank you, Kylie. If I may just add a little more context, just a reminder that we talked about the full scope of work that West Valley Community Services is bringing to the team, and that this is one and the first meeting of several that we have included with this scope of work. So this isn't intended to be the end all be all, check every single box that we intend to incorporate with our approach for AFFH and for these outreach meetings. I also have the ability to bring up the meeting that was just, or rather the document that was just discussed. So I just wanted to let you know, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. And are you referring to the flyer or something else that you want to share? Okay.
I can bring up either the flyer or the agenda that was included with the packet today.
Okay, well, why don't we look at both in order? I think that might help. And I think first we're going to go to members of the public who have their hands raised. Okay, and first we have Jenny.
Thank you, Chair Cutler, Chair Moore. You know, I I compliment everyone for doing the best they can. I'm very, very concerned, and I'm probably going to have to leave in a few minutes because I have to take my mother to the doctor in Santa Cruz. But everyone's doing the best they can. But I am at a loss, I will tell you completely, and I no disregard for either groups, whatever, why West Valley Community Services is running the housing element. Honestly, EMC, and I have great respect for everyone involved in this. The city is contracted with EMC to carry out our housing element. It is not West Valley Community Services is contracted to do social services for Cupertino, but EMC is the primary agency. They have the expertise, and they are what the city residents expect for our money commitment. And I'm at the point now where I think HCD and the state should start reimbursing every single city for all the money being spent on the housing element. I won't say wasted, but this is 450 cities across this state. We are at the point where we're going to be close into this for $1 million, and we might need to see some reimbursement from our state with all of their burgeoning budget, which is being used for things that the people in the state have no control over by the governor. But in that regard, I would expect anything that workshops for the city, et cetera, to be run by EMC. I think West Valley Community Services, that's a wonderful organization. My friend was helped by them when she needed help. But this is something that is citywide, it's countywide, and this is our housing element. It is not West Valley Community Services housing element unless Cupertino hires them to do this. So I'm just saying that I am concerned that we're off to a bad start with this, because I do not feel that I'm confused. I'm not confused. I'm concerned that EMC has too many subcontractors, and I don't know how. I've seen, this is the 6th housing element I've been through, I think, or the 4th. But this is unprecedented times. God bless EMC. God bless West Valley Community Services. God bless Cupertino. I really feel like we are in some very, very bad political times, but I think EMC should be running this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we have Govind. Welcome, Govind.
Hi, am I unmuted?
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, council members and the organizers. I really think that I need to echo the sentiment that we are not really happy with the progress made. Why is this outreach being done at such a late stage? I know that Cupertino has exercised its due diligence in hiring EMC, but I think we should realize we are in the mid-May timeframe, and we should have had all this public outreach and inputs done pretty early in the cycle. For some reason, it has not happened. I know EMC is very highly regarded, but I would appreciate they will take this input in a positive way to understand that, you know, this is my second housing element that I have been involved in the sense as a member of the public. And I think it's a little disappointing, to be very honest, about the kind of progress that has been or not been made, especially because the challenge of RHNA numbers is really huge compared to any other previous cycle. So I think in some sense, I do not want to, I think city should, city and this particular committee should actually take that into cognizance that we are mid-May and it's not a very happy situation to be in. We have had challenges at every level, and the outreach has been, to be very mild on it, has been really lacking. Thank you. That's pretty much my input. Bye. Sorry, done.
Okay, thank you, Govind. Okay, so we're going to bring it back to the committee. And I did see a hand raised a moment ago from Planning Chair Scharf.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, so do we have any comments from members of the committee at this point? Vice Mayor, welcome.
Okay, so I actually think the city staff should take charge of all the community meetings. That was what happened back in the last housing element. City staff ran all the meetings. I don't even remember who was a consultant. Consultants provide assistance, support, technical assistance. And West Valley Community Service is essential for reaching out one segment of fair housing need, which is the particular segment which require state subsidized housing. But HCD webinar, in fact, told us that we need to reach out to people of all income levels, because when I talk to Project Sentinel, people with moderate high income could still get discriminated. They could be discriminated for having children that's too noisy, that's family discrimination. They could be discriminated due to their ethnicity, they told me, because some people do not like the smell of certain cooking. So you can't assume only low-income people get discriminated, because then you have a blind spot. And then we are not really following FFH. FFH is supposed to be fair housing law for all income levels. They should be treated fairly. So I see the panelists. I don't know who they are. We don't even know the name of the panelists. Still now, 1 week, I hope we have the names. But it feels like this is maybe the first of the many meetings, I hope. So this particular panelist reach out one segment. That's the client base for West Valley Community Service, which is fine. But we do need to consider that we need to reach out to other groups who still could face fair housing discrimination. So that's the comment. And also that even though when you send out an email to, say, superintendent of CUSD, does that mean you reach out to the CUSD families? Does that mean you reach out to CUSD employees? Or the email just sat in the mailbox, one person read it? So what we need to do to communicate to the group leaders, to the superintendent, that please send this out to all your employees of your 3 unions and the families of CUSD. The same thing for every group in that community group. Likely the email said and didn't even get passed to anyone. So then we can't really say we reach out to the groups. So how many people did we reach out? I doubt. We need to really tell these groups what we expect is their members, what message they can send out. And another thing is, I think we all mentioned some other groups like Parents Helping Parents, FCSN, families, I think for special need, families, children of special needs. And those are still not included, I think. And even if we include them, how do we communicate that? We need them to reach out to their members. So maybe this first meeting is low-income community and the special needs community. That's fine, that's our first community meeting. then let's do our best to reach out to the actual members of those communities. And yeah, so when would we know who are the panelists?
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and I'll get back to you after we have the housing chair comment, but I'd like to hear if there's some responses from staff on Vice Mayor's questions.
Well, I could start on some of that. I think the purpose, as Andy and Kylie both said, is this is the first of what will be several meetings. So the panelists we have now are representing certain groups, there's certain individuals. For future meetings, we would not repeat those panelists. So that's one thing I think we would really like to get input from the committee as to who for future meetings that they would like directly involved, whether they're representing groups or individuals. That would be really helpful, because I think the plan is to have at least 3 meetings like this. So the next meeting would very likely be sometime in June. If we can start planning for that and subsequent meetings so we can cover all the groups that you think are necessary, that would be good to know. We've certainly gotten some input on Parents Helping Parents, the school districts, and we even had a recent comment about incorporating the sheriff and fire department in. So the more input we could get, we could try to organize that and plan those meetings. I don't know if Andy has something else to add to that or not.
I'll just add that Vice Mayor Chow, I highly value your spirit of collaboration and in which these comments seem to be shared. I really appreciate the idea of making sure that we incorporate a concept like please forward this message to all of your members or whatever it may be appropriate to each of the groups that we reach out to, and we'll definitely take that forward if that's not already incorporated with our message. Yes, and thank you for being kind about sharing with us where our blind spots might be. We're open to improving this process, and we highly value everybody, all of the committee's contributions towards making this a better and more inclusive process. So thank you.
And may I add a few things? Thank you. So for the city staff taking charge of the meetings, we have been working very closely, and the staff will be overseeing all of the logistics of the hybrid event. We're using the city Zoom account. They're overseeing the room setup and everything like that. And so there's at least some collaboration going on, and I'd definitely be interested to hear if you want to see that look different or anything. And another point that I want to add is that one of the things that West Valley is trying to bring to this and to AFFH is our overall connections to the community, not even just our clients. And so our volunteers, our relationships with other organizations and things like that. And so there will obviously need to be additional outreach done outside of this, but we're hoping that that's something that we'll bring with us to some degree, and we can do panels that go outside of just our clients and things like that. One we've been thinking of doing is an event similar to this one, but with a panel of seniors and youth to kind of get that contrast and have that dialogue. And obviously we want to hear what other sort of meetings you would like to see. And then I really appreciate your comment, Vice Mayor Chow, about making sure that we're not only reaching out to the superintendent, for example, but also the parents and everyone like that. And so something that I'll do after this meeting is send to those sorts of leaders the verbiage that they can send out to their members and those that they have access to make sure that we're really actually reaching the community. And then I'm happy to provide the names of the panelists right now. So we're going to have Mayor Dundon representing neurodivergence and disabilities, Joshua Pringle representing homelessness and affordable housing, Kim Hing representing like racial discrimination and ESL discrimination, and then Yavante Rose representing veterans.
Okay, thank you, Kylie. So I actually have a question for Vice Mayor. So it was my understanding that we contracted with EMC and that we would have a planning and EMC working on the outreach. And I really appreciate your question about West Valley Community Services involvement here. And it's actually my preference, and I'd like to hear what your opinion is. It's actually my preference that West Valley Community Services solely focus on the segment of the population which they are servicing under a contract with the City of Cupertino. So I'm a little bit, greatly concerned about having EMC take the contract and essentially send off their responsibilities to West Valley Community Services. And I would like to have our city attorney and the planning staff review the contract to make sure that what we are getting is what we expected to receive, because I'm used to seeing the process go a little bit differently than what I'm seeing here. And I would like to hear your comments, Vice Mayor.
So actually, when I say city staff should be in charge, that does not mean only the planning. The communications department should be involved too. And that's how Saratoga works. Saratoga does a very thorough job in outreach, because they involve the communications department who really specialize in this. And also when we run a community meeting, it doesn't have to be only planners. The communications department should be supporting this kind of event. And it's good for the residents to see our staff be in front, and then they should know them, because they will be part of the community for years to come. And consult on one project. Consultant can support, help invite panelists and prepare materials, but whoever in front should be city staff, planning or communication staff. That I think is more appropriate for a city outreach. And I think it's a good idea that West Valley should focus on their specialized area of, and very important area of low-income homeless community. And other areas like seniors teams, the city staff already have established relations with them, and Parks and Rec department already runs senior center and the teen center, and so they should pitch in, ask other departments to pitch in to help with outreach. I think that we should work as a team together. This is not a project that's only planning working on it. Whenever we need better way to outreach, pulling other resources from other departments. And then the staff could be in charge of that outreach, and EMC and can help support the materials. Yeah, so that's my take on this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
How I remember how it worked the last housing element. Yeah.
Okay. Housing Chair Parrish, your hand's raised.
Yes, thank you. I did want to thank you, Vice Mayor. I wanted to second your request. And my concern, and I've been trying to just jog with what is it, EMC versus West Valley sending it. And I think you hit it right on the nail when you said the city staff. So when people get an email, they don't recognize EMC unless they're actually involved. So maybe if they are going to send it out from EMC, that they have the logo from the city, that it's authorized. I know I've gotten some requests via text and possibly email, and I'm so used to not responding to spam that, or, we get so many of them. If I don't recognize it, I don't click on it. And so I think it's important that the public understand and get something that comes from the city. There is no question, and that it's been vetted. I too had the concern of West Valley, mainly because of, in my mind, they, like you said, the public that they handle, and my immediate thought was, do they have surveyors? I thought I saw an invoice go through my email requesting from Vice Mayor. I'm not sure how much they're being paid and for what services. And that is why I requested that that discussion of West Valley and its capacity be included in today's agenda, because I kind of feel like Barris commented from the public that there's a bit of a lack of transparency, or maybe confusion or lack of communication in how this is working. Who makes the decisions? I went, who chose them? Where did it go to? So if we have some kind of a organizational board, something to tell us who's doing what, and the meeting that transpired to choose them, maybe that's too much transparency. But for me, I did think who chose them and who decided to do what. I would appreciate that sort of transparency in the process, and more for the public to see where they should go to for what problem. I think I heard Kylie mention the library at De Anza. I might have missed if you also included the library in Cupertino. If you did, then I'm sorry if I missed it, but I want to make sure you got that. I also wanted to suggest a community center that's within the Cupertino jurisdiction, right next to Calabasas Park, that library have the flyers, and that community be involved, or they're in our area. Definitely within our school district, anything within our school district. Who decides housing? Oh yeah, did you include the QR codes or business cards, or at least QR codes on the flyers? Okay, great. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Parrish. Our planning manager, Pugh Ghosh, your hand's raised.
Yes, hi, Chair. Good morning. I just wanted to add a couple of comments about the, about city staff being involved in community meetings. Absolutely. All of this outreach, city staff is involved. I know Luke is going to be there at the community meeting next Monday. I also did want to add that at the last housing element, which I think I'm the sole surviving member from that round of the housing element update, all the outreach did go through our consultants at the time. City staff appended, coverage for those meetings, but didn't necessarily conduct the outreach themselves. There were consultants that helped with that effort. City staff merely helped with staffing breakout rooms, which were physical at that time. And so they staffed each of the tables at all the outreach meetings over there. But in any case, city staff is going to be involved in developing the outreach materials and helping out where and pitching in where necessary. So I just did want to add that little comment there. And in terms of who selected West Valley, I think there was it was recommended by our consultants that West Valley, as the prime service provider here in the West Valley, has their boots on the ground, has their ear to what's going on in the community as far as AFFH items go. They do service the people most in need here in Cupertino, particularly the homeless as well, and the unhoused. And also not just in Cupertino, but in neighboring West Valley communities as well. So we've been advised to view the AFFH issues as a regional issue, because Cupertino is one of the highest resource areas in the county. So that has been, I believe, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, ongoing advice from HCD and technical advice that we've received from EVAG and MTC as well. That's all I had to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pugh. Just glancing at the flyer, I do appreciate that it says, on the top, community meeting on the Cupertino housing element, but the first line is explore what affordable housing is. It's not really giving me a sense that the members of the public are going to learn about the housing element process. And it looks as though the focus is just on the affordable housing portion. And I would have preferred that the questions would go to a member of our planning staff, in like just a simple generic planning@cupertino.org, so that people understand that this is an event that is being sponsored by, put on by the City of Cupertino. And also, so in the future, I want to see the City of Cupertino being shown as being the lead, so we reduce the confusion, because we're getting feedback from members of the public that they don't understand who is running this, and why should they respond to something coming from West Valley Community Services. And also the memo, which was included in the packet on city staff, I thought that was a bit unusual. It just looked unusual to me because it gives the impression, when you glance down at the bottom of the memo on City of Cupertino stationery, that the West Valley Community Services person is an actual City of Cupertino employee. So I think that we want to get away from having that appearance in the future. That's my impression of it. City staff can take that issue and look at it and see what they think about it moving forward. But it should be, if it's an email from West Valley Community Services, seems to me it should be on West Valley Community Services stationery, not City of Cupertino. So I was quite shocked at that. Planning Chair Scharf, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, to me, that flyer leaves something to be desired. It should be both affordable housing and market rate housing, because that's what the housing element is all about. I believe we're about 41% needs to be BMR and the rest market rate. I think some people may get the wrong impression of what this meeting is about. One other minor thing, well, Lisa Warren mentioned it, the link to the agenda today's agenda doesn't work. And also, if you go to the City of Cupertino under committees, this committee is not listed there. I don't know if it's because it's a temporary committee or why, but it really should be listed on our committee webpage on our Cupertino site. So I don't know if it's too late to modify this flyer, or why it wasn't vetted by our staff or by members of this committee, but it really should have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Planning Chair Scharf. Also, we had some expectation that the city website regarding the housing element was going to be updated, and that information we were given, I believe, at our previous meeting, which was on the 25th, and we still haven't seen the update. And when you just search for Cupertino housing element, you end up seeing a link on the Cupertino page, which sends you to another page, the Engage Cupertino website, and that one has not been updated. So I think we're also have some legitimate expectations which have not been fulfilled with regards to the website changes, which were supposed to happen so that people would have the educational information about the housing element process. Vice Mayor Chow, your hand's raised.
Yeah. So I usually access the agenda items through the web page, so that one works. Maybe it's just a link in the PDF agenda that doesn't work. As for the committee agenda, I think maybe on the web page we just need to add a line that if it's subcommittee, here is how you access it. You need to go to the drop-down menu, so that we don't have to edit that page whenever we add subcommittee. But we should provide instruction how to access subcommittee agenda items through the web portal. And I would like to have a document. Can someone share a document of the names of the panelists and the community they represent, so I can take a screenshot of that? And I'd like to know, like, for example, someone represents veteran. Why this one individual represents the entire veteran community? Does the individual has the ability to talk to multiple members of the community, or what? That's the kind of things I'm curious about. Similar thing for other rep. A person with an identity doesn't mean they represent the entire community. I like to know, maybe they are president of an association, then they would have access or talked about with their members, then they might provide a valuable comment. So that's what I'm curious to know. And also when can we see the slide deck? I hope the slide deck would include a timeline of the housing element with dates. I think that would be what all the members would want to know after the community meeting, what's upcoming, when. And another thing is, please provide facts about the current housing element, which is that we are allocated 1,000 units, and we identified 5 housing element sites. All 5 projects on those sites have been approved by the council, and we approved over 3,500 units, and maybe like about 350 permits are pulled for those 350. So those facts should be provided as background information for all the community to know, and how many of those are affordable. So those are good information that the public, I think, who attend the meeting would want to know. And of course, the current allocation and actually, it's something that I like to propose, but I thought it doesn't fall under this agenda item, because specifically speaking, I was surprised that we have only one agenda item that's on the March 23rd community meeting. We didn't have an item to talk about future meetings, but we had a 2x2 CUSD meeting between 2 council members and 2 school board members. So I offered to provide a focus group meeting just to CUSD families, and maybe a separate one for CUSD employees. If we could provide that, I think in the very first meeting we mentioned that we would like to have some place on a website someone can sign up to request a meeting to learn about housing element, or a group can sign up for that. That's not captured in the minutes, and I don't know what happened to that. So that's both a request and also a question about update of earlier request. And also I wonder, what's the purpose of this meeting? I thought we want to conduct these meetings, we want to invite as many people to come because we want to hear them, the attendees. So we want the special needs of different people to come. The purpose is to have small group meetings to hear them. But it turns out now I read the agenda more, the purpose of this meeting seems to be not receiving input, but to provide the audience the perspectives from this panelist. Is that, I mean, housing element, we want the perspectives of those panelists as part of the input for the housing element. Their input should be received by the city, yes. But when we have a community meeting, is the purpose to hear the panelists or hear the audience? I'm a little confused now on the purpose of these community meetings.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. I think that's a great question and a good segue back to EMC and West Valley Community Services. I do want to mention, you know, my family has a lot of veterans in it, and housing share parish as well. There is housing assistance for veterans. I'm concerned about who the panelist is that you're bringing on, because there is the VA program for supportive housing, homeless providers, grant and per diem program, housing assistance through HUD. And I am very concerned about whether or not the individual you're bringing to the panelist has the expertise on VA housing. And because I don't want to have it simply be from the perspective of a single individual who perhaps maybe or maybe not has explored all of the VA assistance that's out there. So I don't want to have a misrepresentation of what is being offered. So, I appreciate to hear some more information about who your panelist is. I've brought this up to my brother, who's a former Green Beret, and he's, said there are many forms of assistance for homeless veterans. And they said, frankly, if anybody has a problem finding housing that's a vet, to give him a call and he'll help them out. And that's just one of my sibling veterans. So I'm going to bring it back to Andy. Andy, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Moore. Folding back on Vice Mayor Chow's point, when we have these panelists, the intention, and I'll let Kylie speak more expertly about this because she is the expert with this client community and with the audience specific to Santa Clara County. But in general, we want to inspire further discussion from the audience, from the panelists, and from the representative groups that the panelists are leading. And I hear your concern, Chair Moore, about being able to link back to resources. And it is important that we make clear that this isn't the same as the meeting that the housing department for the city of Cupertino will have had on homelessness and actions, activities, and opportunities for people to be connected. That this is a very different meeting than that. So I do want to make clear, I understand what your concern is, and it's certainly a valid one. And I think we should incorporate it in what our shared expectations are when we facilitate this meeting. So Kylie, I'll hopefully that helps and doesn't confuse. If you could carry on.
Yeah, I'll clarify a couple of things. So one is that we did send an email out from West Valley from our email about a month ago, but ever since then, all communications have only come from the city account. And so all of the emails that I was referring to were sent out directly from the city. And we have been very involved with the communications department. And so the communications department created the flyer. They vetted all of the language and were the last ones to see it before it went out. And then also the communications department will post anything on social media before we do so that we can share it rather than just post it from our account. And so we are working very closely with them. And I definitely heard your point that when people see an email from me, for example, they're not going to be as likely to view it as if they see an official email from Cupertino. And so we'll definitely be doing only Cupertino emails from now on. And in terms of one person representing the entire community, that's definitely a concern that I understand. And I think the reality is that first, obviously no person can represent the entire community, but we can get one person from the community's viewpoint. And so that's what we're trying to do with this. And we can be sure to make it clear that we're not claiming that they represent all the voices in the community, but that it is an opportunity to hear from someone within that group. And I understand that part of the purpose is giving information. And like Andy said, it's meant to inspire more involvement going forward. But also with having 2 different breakout rooms, we're going to be getting a lot of community input that way. And we will have moderators in the breakout rooms who are able to provide us with information that was shared and concerns that community members have, things that they want to know more about. And so we will also be receiving information during that meeting.
Thank you, Kylie. I just want to have a comment and a reminder from our city attorney, because if I heard correctly earlier on, the entire city council is invited, and I believe this CEP as well. So I want to make sure that we don't have a violation of the Brown Act. So what is our ability to comment during this meeting?
Yeah. So if a quorum of either the council or this committee attends, you are allowed to attend, but you wouldn't be able to participate in the meeting. You could only listen. If the committee members or council members wish to participate, that'd be fine if less than a quorum were present.
Okay, thank you. And could everyone please mute their mics unless they're speaking, because I'm hearing a clicking sound at this time. Okay, thank you. And I believe Housing Chair Parrish.
I get confirmation about some of the requests I made. So one is I'd like a document with the panelist names and the organization that they do represent. And I'd like the slide deck to include timelines with dates and where we are in the housing element. And I'd like facts about the current housing elements, which I mentioned shared in the slide deck.
Okay, and thank you, Vice Mayor. And I want to just to reiterate regarding the timeline, you have made this request, I want to say for months now, and I have not seen it someplace posted yet. So I think that's a really good question. And Planning Manager, actually, I was moving on to Housing Chair Parrish.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, can I get a confirmation from staff these three will be included? These three requests will be included. Yeah.
Okay.
Ask a question, Chair.
I'm sorry. Okay, I thought I was letting Vice Mayor get her answered, but okay. So I think that kind of it goes with what the organizational board or what I was requesting. If I'm correct, what's happening now is the advisory committee is making requests, specific requests. I don't know whose job it is to take these requests, get the data, issue information, put it out. Where is it being put out? And I think that's where the frustration is coming on the minutes, because most people are used to seeing it in the minutes. But I'm starting to just wonder, as far as organizational structure, if it's just one city staff member taking notes and trying to get all these questions and or issuing orders to get things done, is it'd be pretty hard and pretty hard on that one person. And then when we have these meetings, who's going to be collecting it, written it, where's it going? Where's the database for all that? I'm assuming EMCs, that's their job to obtain that. Would like to see how that's being handled or where it's being gathered, and because that's going to be the goal, what we're going for, the end result of everything that's happening. My understanding is these meetings are just to propose what's happening. We give our perspective advisory committee. We request info for the public, and then we get responses. And so I would like to see I'd like to propose or request that from each meeting, we get the request either emailed to us to confirm or somewhere written down. Vice Mayor asked for this, Chair Moore asked for this, and get the answers as well for us, as well as for the public, and a resolution so maybe next meeting, whether it's a senior planner, whoever's running this meeting and making decisions, gives us, these are the answers, here's what was decided by who, then we all know and we're not so confused. That's what I'd like to suggest. And then I'd like to suggest for the VA that maybe we contact, or the city contacts a VA representative, see what requests they get, someone that actually gets that data, what requests they get from the area of Cupertino, and they would have, I think, authority and a correct perspective on VA requests, needs, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Parrish, and I think that you're making really good points, because there has been a lot of confusion about who is in charge of this the housing element process, and then there's also confusion from members of the public regarding site selection and whether or not we are involved in site selection. And so far, site selection, and I thank Lisa Warren from the public for answering Barris's question. Site selection has been with the Planning Commission, and we were, the council members were at least I know a couple of us were pretty disappointed that the last Planning Commission meeting was canceled, and we were hoping that the site selection was going to go back to them, but instead site selection did not happen, and that meeting was canceled. And I think an opportunity was really lost there, and it was very unfortunate. So I'm not sure who's in charge, and I see Planning Manager Pugosh, your hand's raised. Perhaps you can help clarify that, so we know who to direct our questions to, and that if we're not receiving this information that we've requested, who ultimately should we be speaking to about that? Thank you.
So in terms of the project management of the project, I think Luke is the senior planner who is the project manager. In terms of requests for work, specifically that is being worked on the housing element, EMC is working on those pieces. So they are heavily supporting Luke in this effort, and Luke is supporting. It's kind of a mutual a lean-to relationship. In terms of data requests and such, I guess if there's specific data requests, where there's consensus from the committee on things that they wish to see, we could certainly work toward those. At this point, I think we just need to have very clear direction on what is requested, because we need to move the process forward and get to an adopted housing element. But with that said, the project manager is Luke, and and me as well. So,
okay, thank you. And just to go back to a couple meetings ago, there was a request that EMC would have had an outreach meeting, 2 outreach meetings, one with developers and another organization, which I can't recall at this moment, that would have already taken place. And so far, since we began this process, this subcommittee, I guess it was March 30th, we've had, I believe, no outreach meetings have taken place, and we're 2 months will have passed before we get to the March 23rd meeting. And whereas other cities, Redwood cities, submitted their housing element, they're done. Okay, Vice Mayor Chow.
Yeah. So one other request in my really long comment, sorry about that, is the focus group meeting for CUSD families and employees, and then whether we will have a website for groups to request a meeting. For example, focus group meeting, for sheriff or public agency employees. So how are we going to handle different focus group meetings, or are we just going to have 3 meetings and done?
If I may ask a clarifying question, I mean, one of the things that we have is a scope of work and a budget associated with it. And so, yes, we can add as many focus group meetings as we wish. It'll all add to the timeline and the budget. So we just need to be mindful of that. But if that is the committee's wish, and if that is what the council agrees to, we're absolutely willing to have as many meetings as is required and necessary to conduct this process. Okay. But with that said, there are 3 AFFH meetings specifically that WBCS is contracted to do. Anything beyond that, we'll have to evaluate what EMC's contract covers. And, if there is something that is not covered, but that is desired by this committee and approved by the council, then we may need to amend the contract and include the budget, and thereby also extend the deadline, the timeline.
I see. Okay, thank you. So when I talked to the Saratoga Director of Community and Development, she is listed on their website as the contact for housing element. So I called her up. She said they did this on-demand meeting. she is a presenter. She prepared one set of presentation and used the same presentation for all the meetings. So to her, it's just 1 hour of time to present the same material and then get feedback. So they did not ask the consultant to conduct those kind of meetings, just for your information. And I guess if the presentation is available, I can even help outreach to the CUSD community and make that presentation.
That's a really good
don't
question.
know if that's allowed. Would that count as the outreach under housing element? I mean, allowed, I can always do that, but does that count as outreach under housing element if a council member or a volunteer steps up to take the presentation presented by the staff to present the material and collect? I guess the feedback can always come in the form of a recording.
Yeah, I think we'll have to discuss that internally and with Andy, with EMC, to determine whether that would count as outreach or not. In terms of just making sure that, timeline wise, there are a lot of projects that Cupertino does that Saratoga doesn't have as many of, so there are only, certain things that we can accommodate. But with that said, we'll certainly take your, input under advisement for sure.
And to both the vice mayor and Pugh's points, I'm wondering if will we be getting access to this presentation that you'll be, I'm going to assume that there's a presentation, a slide deck that you have prepared for next Monday's meeting, and we should have some access to that. And I would also like to see in all of these, the previous meeting packets, which you have online, that the presentations be made available, because we have been looking at PowerPoint presentations that are already prepared. If those could be included in the previous agenda items under presentations, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you haven't completed the presentation for next Monday, I would assume that probably by Friday that you have your presentation packet should be complete. If we could have a copy of that, if it's not done Friday, if we could see it Monday, that would be great. And I'm going to assume that this is a somewhat generic presentation packet that would be suitable for all different community groups that you would be presenting to share what the housing element process is. And that possibly there are some more fine-tuned slides which you need to include if you're going to visit a special group, like maybe you want to show something for the VA, possibly, but perhaps that's getting too far into the weeds for your presentation. But I just want to make sure that we have access to this presentation either Friday or Monday, if need be. That would be great. See, Planning Chair Scharf, your hand's raised.
Oh, it's nothing major. Just two people so far in this meeting have said March 23rd, and I want to make it clear that it's not March 23rd. It's May 23rd.
Oh,
yeah. Chair Moore, you said that, and I think someone else said that as well.
Maybe me too.
I don't want people to think that this already occurred in the past.
Oh, thank you. I'm wishing I could turn back the clock, I guess.
No, that's fine. And I also received an email that was supposed to be read during oral. Apparently that wasn't, but I guess it's too late for that now. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, that should be in the written communications up online right now. Okay, Housing Chair Parrish.
I promise this will be my last comment. I just wanted clarification from what was just responded by planning manager. If we have questions, if we have requests for data, that they can possibly work on that, so that I could just wanted to clarify, the whole advisory committee was put together so that the process was looked at and opinion to the public could be opened up so that the process, we could advise on the process. If we request data, it's not for our benefit, right? It's for the benefit of the process. We're just kind of advising, supposedly, on what is needed, what could be looked at differently, because more minds the better. Not, more 2 minds are better than 120 or even better. And so I'm just, again, the data, if we requested data, I just kind of got the impression that it was for us. If we want the question, that we will be given the data, but then I just want to clarify, this is for the public and for the process. If we need data, it's so that we can continue, but nothing is stopped. So if we requested like planning a chair more mentioned and more meetings and nothing has happened, or questions and we get no data back, then why are we having these meetings? It really is to advise, and so that process is taken and either city council approves and they move forward, or whoever's in charge takes it, makes a decision and moves forward. So I kind of took me off guard when you asked that. Oh, you said that. And these questions we're asking is really not for our benefit. And if they're not going to be taken towards the benefit and towards the transparency of the public, then, why, like you said, we're on a budget. We should not continue that. So yeah, I'd like to request that we have the data, the questions that we ask reported back, and, tell us what's going to be, what action is going to be taking place. Thank you.
Okay, I have a quick question for our city attorney. I believe it is chair's prerogative if I want to open this back up to members of the public to have some comments, because we've been speaking for a good bit of time on this item. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And yes, it's the chair's prerogative unless there were objections from a majority of the committee.
Okay. If I don't have any objections, I'd like to give. I do see a hand raised from the vice mayor.
Oh, I hope we have enough time left for future agenda items discussion this time.
I believe we do. Thank you. We're at 12:27. I just want to make sure, because we spoke so long, that if members of the public had some thoughts about the things that we were communicating, that they would get a chance to let us know. And I do see one member of the public, Govind, with your hand raised. Welcome, Govind. Welcome, Govind. You are unmuted.
Invested in this.
Oh, there. Welcome, Govind.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Actually, I thank the committee for engaging the public and making sure that we are able to provide inputs. It's a very welcome process. I appreciate. In fact, I remember that both our director of community development as well as our planning manager, both of them were involved in the previous cycle. So I believe there's a lot of institutional knowledge available. My concerns mainly had been that, in the previous cycle, we probably were going to add about 8% of the existing housing stock in terms of housing element, whereas during this cycle, it's going to be approximately 25% of the housing stock that we have. So, I mean, these are approximate numbers, so I don't want somebody to come, but it's, the order of magnitude is very high. It's almost like, I would guess, close to 3.5 to 4 times the magnitude of addition that we need to do compared to the previous cycle. So keeping that in mind, I somehow felt that, it would have been very helpful if, as the project managers for this particular thing, if it was possible for you to kind of understand the gravity and be able to have budgeting done upfront. But that's not, I'm not saying that it has not been done. I'm just saying that somehow the process has, of course, a little bit expanded with the involvement of CEP, with the involvement of an advisory committee. But I think overall, we just need a mechanism by which we can reduce the anxiety, because adding 25% housing stock to a complete kind of fully built city is not an easy challenge. And we hope the people who have to benefit from it, especially the affordable housing segment, we get all the inputs from them, because they are the people who are going to have the benefit of whatever exercise we are going through. And I would appreciate, any kind of thing that all your strength in terms of institutional knowledge that you bring to this, it's going to definitely help us achieve this. I do not want to blame anybody in terms of, people we are subcontracting to get their help to accomplish this. But I think overall, we as a city should own this process. And, please take everything in a very positive sense. We are not trying to put the blame on anybody, but we want to get better at this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for those comments, Govind. I see Vice Mayor Chow, your hand's raised.
No, I think I just forgot to lower it.
Okay. All right. So there are no other members of the public with their hands raised, so we are closing public comment. At this point, I would like to see the flyer put back up, and we go back to the original agenda item and mention the time, date, and location of next week's meeting. If someone could put up the flyer. I think we need to probably close this item with a reminder of our next, this very important community meeting coming next week. So is someone able to share the screen, show the flyer, and we need to get the word out using our public information office. Thank you, Pew. And then Andy, if you could send us off with a welcoming message to this meeting, that would be great. And as soon as you're unmuted, we'll
Thank you.
Get
yes.
going. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Moore. Thank you, Pew, for bringing that up. Yes, we welcome all who are participating in today's meeting, and for all of those who you can send this invitation to. Everyone throughout Cupertino, we invite you to join us in this meeting to understand better about the housing element and understand individuals' needs for housing within Cupertino, even if some of those folks live within the region and who would just like to be able to live within Cupertino. We ask that you bring your sense of compassion and your openness to hearing others' stories and for sharing. This is a journey that we're on together. The 6th cycle housing element is something that's very drastically different from any housing element update that has occurred in the past. HCD has much higher threshold for understanding affirmatively furthering fair housing, and this is a huge piece in us meeting those standards. And it's also a way to just get to know the larger community and become an agent for solution towards this housing element and it being successful through certification. So thank you to all of those who will take the time next Monday. It's in the evening. We want to be inclusive. And for those who can't make that meeting, it'll also be recorded. And we warmly welcome all comments that everyone might want to share in relationship to that meeting. And those comments will actually motivate us in our next steps in selecting policies. There's a lot of great policies out there. HCD is asking for us to connect the dots between what we're hearing from the public and the policies that we're selecting. So thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Andy. And Vice Mayor Chow, your hand's raised.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. That was really well said. And I'd like to thank all the staff members and Kylie for all the effort putting this. I know I usually demand a lot because I feel like it's my responsibility to help the residents to do the best. And but I really, really appreciate all that you do. And one other thing that maybe this fits under the future agenda item is I understand we have only 3 community meetings planned. It's not sufficient for HCD's strict standard, because I see San Jose has a long list of focus group meetings, and other new cities have a long list of focus group meetings. And if we are only planning 3, what does that make us? And does that meet the requirement? Even if we can say, okay, we outreach to these 6, 7 groups who did not send anyone. So what then? What's our obligation under the HCD's standard? That I hope to understand. Maybe that could be, and if we want to include the focus groups, what's the minimal cost way to do it? Maybe that could be an agenda item for the next meeting. Yeah.
Okay, I think those are great suggestions, and I think the question's very, very important. Let's put that under the future agenda setting item and be finished with item 4. We move on to staff and committee reports. Do we have any staff or committee reports?
No, there are no staff reports.
Okay. Thank you, Luke. And now we are on to future agenda setting, and we have a few items that have been suggested already. The most recently is, are we meeting enough groups? Are we meeting the requirements? So if we could have that come back with a report for any information regarding that, and whether or not we need to change course a little bit. And then we had a host of other informational request items. We want to have the document with the panelists' names. We should have that probably, I would assume today we can have that timeline that should already be set up, and the committee should have that information already. And there's informational facts wanting to be posted on the website. I believe that was the Vice Mayor's request. And there's some other questions that we had. One was regarding the some financial requests regarding the invoices that we had seen, and the meetings that have already taken place. One of my questions was whether or not the meetings between EMC and West Valley Community Services, which were I think around 30 hours have been billed. I wanted to know if those meetings, we could have some information about them and whether or not they will meet any of HCD's requirements. If there are more requests, I want to be sure that staff is collecting these, and that the committee can be sent the list that we expect, that we were mentioning here, and then we can individually email back that we concur with the list that we're given. Thank you. Okay, and I see Andy, your hand's raised.
Apologies, it wasn't intentionally raised.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Then we bring it back to the Vice Mayor.
So I wonder whether the chair was consulted before the agenda is finalized. According to the commission and committee handbook, the chair of a committee should be consulted before the agenda. For the agenda, in fact, the chair should be part of the discussion of setting the meeting agenda, not just consulted after it's set.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. That's a really great question. And one of the problems that short answer is no. And one of the problems is that there have been some agenda changes that have kind of shown up later on, so that not only do I see the printed agenda, which will say one thing, but there'll be some plans which the consultant has made, so that even during the meeting that I'm getting a little bit surprised. So the last meeting was had better coordination, and this one did not. And as committee members noted, there was information that we were expecting to have here at this meeting, which we did not. So I hope that answered your question. I've had the same issue with the Environmental Review Committee, which I chair, and there was a meeting that was set up there, and I was not consulted, and a little bit I don't know if broadsided is too strong a word, but surprised to have meetings canceled, and then one show up. So I think it's been an ongoing problem, not just for this committee, the ERC, but for other commissions as well. As I mentioned earlier, the Planning Commission cancellation, which missed a really fine opportunity to work on site selection further, as an example. Does that answer your question, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. Just one more thing. It's regarding, I see that Barry is still here. I think after public comment on non-agenda item, we are allowed to provide short response. For example, we could have told him, please email citycouncil@cupertino.org with your questions so that we can follow it up, or email whoever that can answer his question. So Barry, please email us so we can follow up and help find answers for you. And thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think that's really important that the site selection process feedback get to council because it's been at the Planning Commission level, and I'm very concerned that it's going to jump to council without having an interim step at the Planning Commission for a second look. And I think that would be where Barris's comments could really be helpful and help provide guidance towards the community outreach regarding emailing back to individuals who have wanted to participate and let them know where we are in the process. I think that would be really helpful. I thought I saw another hand raised. Okay, so do we want to set a future meeting? So we're going to be having our community meeting next Monday, and I see a hand raised from Housing Chair Parrish.
No, I thought I did have you probably read my mind. I did promise that was my last comment, but I did want to thank the staff. And sometimes in these meetings we get in what's not correct and what's missing, but there's a lot of right things that have been done. The staff, this is a completely different process than it has before, so I'm sure the process has taken the staff a little off guard as well from what they're used to doing. There's a lot of right things. I want to thank everyone that has really tried to do that. The flyer looked pretty good with some comments again, and thank you, planning manager, as well. I know it's a lot of work and everyone involved. That's all.
Okay, so do we want to come back and, well, we can actually have a little bit of a kind of a discussion about how the first meeting went at our next meeting, and talk about how the community meeting went and any sort of feedback that we might have towards the next one, and what groups to be looking at. That could help. Or we get the feedback from EMC and let us know what their best advice is for who the next outreach meeting would have us contacting. So if we were doing that, and the next meeting is sometime in June, is what I heard, is it possible that we can schedule a meeting for this committee before your next group committee meeting? I should say a community meeting.
Chair Moore, if I may, I don't believe that a date has been selected for the June meeting yet, unless Andy, do you want to correct me if I'm wrong? We aren't aware whether the community hall is available or not. There's some logistics on our end that we need to figure out before we can schedule that meeting. So I think if you would bear with us while we make those arrangements, and then we can maybe circle back with you, Chair, and then with the other committee members to make sure that they're available for a meeting similar to this one about a week before that meeting.
Okay, so I'm tentatively thinking if we could mark our calendars for June 6th at 11 a.m. that might be wise, just to make sure that we've blocked off a time. And okay, and I see Vice Mayor, you have your hand raised.
I don't believe the committee is informed of what the next two community meetings will be in terms of the format, the group we focus on, or the location? Because according to the HCD webinar on AFFH, they suggest that we hold the meetings in different geographical locations. So for example, we could have one on Hollings Elementary where the COSD board usually meet, and then but it's still pretty close to the city hall, but at least then it's in a school district building and they can co-host, and then more likely school employees and families would attend. So like the first one is co-hosted by West Valley community. So maybe the second one could be co-hosted by different group. And the third one could be co-hosted by 2 or 3 more different group. So that way, those 2 or 3 group who co-host the meeting will have more participation and ownership on the community meeting. So, but then this has never been discussed or consulted with the subcommittee. So when are we going to have that discussion? And this shouldn't be discussed here, actually.
Okay, I think that's a really good question. So we at the next meeting we could be looking at the format and the format, the groups, and the location of the future meetings. But and I think I'll leave this to Pew. I believe that it would be under EMC to make the determination of what the 2 groups, how they're going to be hosted and the location. So they can provide some suggestions in order to meet AFFH for where these meetings would be and who they're going to be contacting. But I don't know that we, and we can provide input, but I don't know that we are as a committee able to direct.
I would, I'm trying to think these through things in my head, but in terms of recording and making these things available, to the public, I think the best venue would be a venue that the city controls, because we do need to take into consideration how our video team can work with, the equipment that they have, or what their capabilities are. So I wouldn't want to, if the intention is to have that be recorded and be available on the city's housing element website, that would be my suggestion. But other than that, collaborating with the CUSD or other community groups is not necessarily a bad thing. And, I will defer to Andy and Kylie on what their recommendation is, because this is really their baby. So Andy, if you have anything to add, please do.
No, but I appreciate, Pew, your concern about video staffing. And I do think that there's a high value added to be able to have these recorded.
So the CUSD meeting is, they have been conducting hybrid meeting in the Collins Elementary. So they should have the ability to do that.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. So that will be taken under advisement by EMC. And so the next meeting we have tentatively scheduled at June 6th, 11 a.m. Am I hearing any conflicts from members of the CEP for this particular date and time, or does that seem okay?
I would also like to ask Andy and Kylie to make sure that they're available at that time.
Thank you so much. That's very important.
I'm available.
So one other idea is we could even have another meeting in, say, De Anza College. Then you really could outreach to the college students who needs housing.
That's a really good point.
And young professionals, yeah.
And if not there, then the Quinlan is pretty close. And I don't know if we have, if it's wise to have it at the senior center, but that is also really, really close to De Anza College. So there's some alternative locations to help the student population, because we did receive an email from one of the students who wanted to participate, and I believe there was some outreach back to that individual as well, which I really appreciate. So that's really smart. So far we're seeing a yes to June 6th at 11 a.m. No conflicts. Housing Chair Parrish, your hands raised.
No, just is the location of the next few meetings going to be put into the next agenda? Is that what's to add suggestions to that, or are we going to open that to the public for suggestions? Is that going to be asked on the Element website where the public would like to see it? I'm just not sure if we're discussing this now or if we're putting it on the agenda for the next meeting.
It was my understanding it would be on the agenda. Pew, do you have some comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, without knowing exactly what the outreach will be and with input from Andy and Kylie, it'd be very hard to kind of put that together by the 6th. However, I think we can certainly discuss and have that be available on June 6th. We do expect that we're going to have the outreach meeting on the 23rd. And there's certain other work product that I know that EMC needs to work on. And so I don't want to rush this one just to kind of, put something else on the back burner. So we'll be back with ideas on the 6th.
Thank you. I'm okay on the 6th. The 6th is okay with me.
Yeah, I have a question in terms of the timeline of the community outreach meetings versus housing element draft. Are we supposed to finish all the outreach meeting before the first draft, or we could continue to conduct more after the first draft, but before it's finalized? We know that we are going to have first, second draft, at least, maybe third.
So if I may start off, and then Andy, if you would mind supplementing my answer, my understanding is that we have to draw a through line between the input that we receive and the actual policies that we propose, and those go in the draft housing element. So the bulk of the outreach does have to occur prior to the draft being released. That would be my recommendation, so that we don't get comments like, you haven't completed your outreach, why are you proposing your draft? So and that is and we do have to incorporate a 30-day public review of the draft housing element. So all of that kind of adds into the timeline. So yes, that is what I would say. That is my understanding. And Andy, if you have anything to add, please feel free.
Very well said, Pew.
Okay,
Appreciate partnering. Yes.
Then another question in terms of timeline is, I think I have asked for assessment of the current housing element, assessment of the current fair housing situation. Those are supposed to be provided so that we can base our new policies on those assessments. I think I've been asking that, wondering when we will have that.
So all of that goes into the draft housing element, and that will be presented. It's still under preparation, and so we're going to be presenting all of that with the draft housing element.
That's not what I would expect, because housing element has two parts: site selection and policies. Policies, you are expecting that you will have assessment, propose policies without getting council input, and then the council will see the draft. That's not what other city does it. Other city has, for example, Menlo Park has the housing strategies policy discussion at Planning Commission and Housing Commission before this comes to the council, because those are policy directions. It shouldn't come directly from consultant. It needs direction from the public, selected, elected, appointed officials. And then the housing element consultant use that, based on that direction, then prepare policies.
I see the city attorney, your hands raised.
Yeah, I think we're straying both from the agendized items and the current item that we're discussing, which is future agenda items.
Hey,
okay, thank you.
Terrible audio
Planning
problem.
Chair Scharf. Right, someone has some
yeah,
clicking.
it's Chris. Every time he unmutes, we get this huge clicking sound.
Right.
I don't know what's wrong with his audio.
Thank you, Planning Chair Scharf. And I think with that, unless there are further comments that are pertinent to the future agenda setting. Luke will be collecting the requests for items which we've made throughout this meeting, and we need to see the issue with the continuance on the meeting minutes addressed as well. Please try to get if you have questions of staff, please try to work on those offline between now and June 6th. And I do see Vice Mayor Chow, your hand is raised. We all set? Okay, great. So with that, we will see everyone next Monday, May 23rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at Community Hall. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon.